thinking about a story. It's arrived in my mind. Once upon a time, there was a fisherman, and the fisherman had been out in the roaring 40s all night and all day, and it was the dusk of the next day, and he had empty hands, and if you have empty hands as a fisherman, you may be querying whether you are a fisherman at all. It was actually dark by the time he got back to the beach, and there was a surprise waiting for him, because on the beach there was a group of people he'd always heard rumours about but never could quite believe they were real. They were the Selkie. These were the people of the seals who occasionally would drop their seal skins and take human shape, and on that beach would enact all sorts of strange rituals and songs and ceremonies that humans heard rumours of but didn't really understand. He would have thought this was really a rumour or a folk tale from when he was a kid. So as he turned up quietly on his boat, he was astonished to see them there. And it was one of those full moon nights, and people are always raving about the moon. The moon hasn't been seen like this for 18 years or 80 years or 1,000 years. Well, this was one of those nights. The moon was above them all. La Luna, the yellow bannocked, like a loaf, a full fat loaf of a moon above everyone. And there are the Selkie people, and they are singing and they are dancing and they are generally enjoying themselves. And the lad is behind a rock. Now his hut is some distance away, but he's so hypnotised by the scene. It's so rare what he's seeing. When you see a rare thing, he can't help but stop. And it takes a minute before he realises that he's actually leaning on one of the seal skins of the people that are dancing. And I don't know why he did it, but he took the skin and he just pressed his face into it. He just pressed his face into the skin. It was a pungent, glorious thing. All freedom came upon him when he smelt the sea and he smelt the moon. Somehow within that skin, which was the skin of someone that was out there, there was all that moon knowledge in it. There was all that knowledge of the aquatic depths. All the strange little fishes that move here and there were in the smell and the scent and the consciousness of the skin. Do you think he would be able to put a skin like that down and just jog on? I'm afraid not. I mean, if you think Gollum had a problem with the ring, it was as for nothing for this young lad once he had the skin. The skin told him about everything he did not have in his rather predictable life. It was a thing of the waves and the tides and the moon, not the earth and the plough and the rocks and the people. So he took it, and he was almost back at the cottage. He was just about to lift the latch of the cottage, and he felt a hand on his shoulder. And he turned, and illumined in the moonlight was a woman. And the woman clearly was the woman who owned the sealskin that he had. And she didn't talk to him. She just held her hand out, imploring him to give the skin back. And it was then that the lad, for the first and only time in his life, the fisherman, swooned into the experience of falling in love. He gazed at her. She was the sky woman of the dawn, the sky woman of the dusk. She was the apple blossom. She was the May. She was the everything. Now, people will tell you when you fall in love like that it can bring out the very best in you, the most gallant. But anybody that's lived for more than a few years know it can also bring out the most deranged in you, the most inconstant, the most mad in the head. Well, he got a bit mad in the head, and I am ashamed to say he would not give the skin back. Now, when someone has your skin like that, they have complete power over you. This is a catastrophic event when you lose your skin. and he walked back into the hut with it, and she had absolutely no choice but to go with him. They set up a life together. I mean, there was nothing else that she could do. He hid the skin, actually, and in the fireplace there was a little alcove, and he slipped it in. She didn't know where it was. And occasionally when she slept, he'd go and take in the divine pungency of the skin and then hide it again. But she gradually became a rather thinned out version of that wild being he'd met, with her snorting nostrils like a galloping pony on the beach, a galloping pony of the waves. Now, the hut didn't have much to say for itself, but it had a window, and through this little window she could just about see the beach. She could just about see the sea. She could certainly see the moon once a month when it was at its fullness. And when the moon was at its fullness, she got most agitated, and she would sit under the rays, and she would rock back and forward, and she would scratch her skin, and she would scratch her skin, and she would scratch her skin. And her kids, she now has 7 children, would see this, and it was most dismaying to them. They knew something was terribly wrong. Now, the fisherman was not a violent man. He wasn't essentially wicked. He was just, as my daughter would say, a little basic. And so he's out on the boat one day. He's out there far away over the green teeth of the sea. And the moon is beginning to come out, and she's starting to rock, and she's starting to moan. And it was her youngest daughter couldn't bear to see her mum like that anymore. So she pointed to the fireplace. She just pointed. And just in the pointing of the thing, she announced and named in time and space exactly what it was that the seal woman most longed for. And she didn't stop to thank her child. She didn't write her a letter. She didn't gather the kids together. She didn't deliver some final blessing. She didn't even try and take them with her. She just ran to the fireplace, put her hand into the alcove, and shot out the door towards the sea. And as she ran, she made a sound. Now, what would this sound be like? The sound, you can't really mistake it for a joy sound, but you can't quite mistake it for a sound of grief either. It is, yeah, the hairs go up on the back of your neck when you hear the sound. She made that sound. And as she is making that sound, the people of the sea, her tribal affiliation, her people, her clan, they make the sound too. The howl comes. The moon makes the frickin' sound. The sea makes the sound. The world makes the sound at that moment. As she runs from the domestic, she runs from the trap she's been in. She's gone. I mean, she is gone. Well, a few hours later, the fisherman comes back, and over time, he and the family wait, and they wait for the latch to be lifted on the door of the hut. They wait for that glorious feminine presence to re-enter their lives. And they wait, and they wait, and they wait. She doesn't come back. She doesn't come back. And it is a drier place, that hut, without her. There's less imagination in that hut. There is less wit in that hut. There's less feeling in that hut. There's just a rather neurotic middle-aged man in that hut. And one by one, the kids, once they're old enough, they slip off out into the world. Maybe they go to Glasgow, maybe they go to London or Dublin, maybe even Paris or New York. But they've gone and they don't come back. Maybe they're out searching for the moon too. Maybe they're searching for their deep aquatic depths. But what they don't know is this, is that after about a year, the seal woman started to come back. She started to stand as near as she could on the beach to look through the window into the hut and to the people and the warmth and them gathered at table together, her family, That window had been the place with which she looked from the hearth out to the wild and to the sea and to that kind of liberation, that kind of news of the universe, as the poets say. But now she looked in at the warmth and the beautiful ordinariness of her old life and her kids. And she wondered to herself, could this have gone some other way? And what she couldn't have known is that the fisherman would stare out of the window through the rain to the moon and the cliffs and the beach and the sea, and curse his smallness of character that he stole, not courted, that woman. And he would think to himself, could this not have gone some other way?